Ladies and gentlemen, we see that the problem in today's society is that this debate evolves around the developing world, where in these countries people are uninformed and unaware about the capability of their votes. Because of this, they do not vote, and the majority of them are not aware of what is going on in their own countries. So that's why we see that that is compulsory, and we should make it mandatory for everyone to vote in the first place. But we believe that our arguments can still be applicable under the developed world anyways. So going on and seeing what the problems are, we see that it is an inactive election, where there's not enough participation from the citizens and of that society, resulting in an inadequate formation of the government that does not tackle the need of the society as a whole, where we see parts of the society have not spoken out so that the government can listen to them, and the government cannot help them because they have not been able to vote in the first place. So moving on to the definitions of this argument. Of this debate, sorry. So first of all, voting in a national election is when the country is choosing or electing the next president or prime minister and its party. And mandatory is when everyone at the eligible age must vote. So we see that in order for us to win this debate today, we must prove to you that there is a lack of interest in the status quo, and that too, we need to make it compulsory for everyone to vote by making it mandatory. So moving on to how we can make this happen and how we can make this effective. One, we see in our model that we should provide governmental campaigns and citizenship classes where we'll teach people what sort of choices you should be making, and we'll teach them what are the consequences.
Point of information, ma'am?
Sorry, please sit down. What are the rights decisions that you should go for that you would desire, so it makes sure that the voting would become more effective in that country. And secondly, we'll make everyone vote under the eligible age. And thirdly, if they do not vote, then we see that there would be a considerable amount of fine that they will have to pay. So this is why we're giving them the incentive to go up there and show their opinions to the government. We see the same example as this, as how the government fines people when they're drinking and driving. So that's why there's less people in society today who would drink and drive at the same time, because the government makes them pay a fine. So therefore they're less likely to go against the law in the first place. So moving on to my split, I will be talking about how informed elections will reflect the needs of the citizens. My second speaker will be talking about how mandatory voting empowers minorities and creates awareness. Yes?
Some people in these developing countries are so fed up with their political system, they don't even wish to dignify it by going to the polls. Why is that not a legitimate choice?
Ladies and gentlemen, if they don't agree with the opinions of the elections, then they can still go up there and say there's on the ballot sheets that they vote for, there's one saying that they would abstain and not choose them. So we want the citizens to go up there and just check on the abstain part, so it means that at least the government will know that these people do have an opinion of what is going on in this country. So moving on to how informed elections will reflect the needs of the citizens. Firstly, on the first level, let's look at how the importance of democracy and national elections. We define this democracy as when the government is listening to the people, since democracy is created for the people, by the people. So we see that to make a pure and strong democracy, everyone needs to speak out to make sure that the government will be listening to them. And we see that in a national election, it plays as a strong part in a democracy, because in the process in which people choose their leaders by voting and getting the representation such as the Prime Minister. So these people the Prime Minister has to set up things as political, economic and social policies, where these policies directly affect the citizens of that country in their daily lives, as we see the example of how many hours they have to work a day, or the labor rights, or the minimum wage. So because of this, it means means that when the people don't vote, they cannot be involved in making these policies where they are directly affected by these policies in the first place. Please sit down. As we see the example in China, where it is not a democratic country, where it's a socialist country, where there's a sweatshop economy, where people have a tough condition, where they're abused by their employers, where there's cases of suicides and they have low wages, and because of the regulations to protect their rights are not implemented by the government, since they cannot speak up, we're saying that if we let the people speak up for themselves, then these effects on their daily lives could be improved because they are able to tell the government what is going on. But because in the example of China, people are not allowed to get their voice up to the government in the first place, where we see we want these countries to improve so that people are informed that they are allowed to have to vote for who they want. So we see that, therefore, in a democratic country, it is important to have everyone to vote. Moving on to the second level of our mechanism is going to incentivize voters to go up to the ballot box. We see that people now are unaware that they have the right to vote, and that every time in the national elections. But the second thing is that they simply are not interested in the election, since they believe that these elections are far-fetched from them, since there is a distance between the government and the people. So that's why we want to bring this far-fetched idea and create the distance to be a shorter distance, so that people can bring up their voices to the government, so that the government would be listening to them. But before I move on, go.
Do you really think people will get a better impression of elections if you force them to get out of bed and vote when they don't want to?
We see that it is important for them to get out of bed and go to vote, because these policies are going to be affecting their lives for the next 4 years of their lives, ladies and gentlemen. And therefore, going back to our mechanism would improve the people is that, in fact, by having these national elections affecting their lives, we must let them realize it, and we must make them care that it is important for them to go up there and get out of bed, ladies and gentlemen. And making it mandatory means that people now are aware of their decisions, since one, they are educated under our model to make sure that their votes are important and that their votes do count. And because of these things, now the government can know what the people really want. For example, where education systems are not good enough, the government does not know it unless the people go up there and yell to the government and say, we need better education system. And you can do this directly by voting for the people who you want. So we see that we have proven that in a democratic country, everyone needs to vote because they are directly affected by these decisions that the policies are making. Thank you.